You're listening to a LeftLion podcast.
Welcome to a special episode of the LeftLion Interviews podcast. My name is Jared Wilson and I'm the editor-in-chief and co-founder of LeftLion. I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, George Akins, the managing director of DHP Family. So if you're not aware of DHP Family, they run lots of live music venues and events, both in Nottingham and elsewhere in the country. In Nottingham, their venues include Rock City, Rescue Rooms, Stealth, the Bodega, and most recently they acquired the Palais on Lower Parliament Street, which celebrates 100 years as a venue in 2025. Other venues they run across the country include the Thekla in Bristol, which is a former cargo ship moored in Bristol's mud dock, and Oslo and the Garage in London. In terms of events, as well as the dozens of gigs that they put on every week, they are also the company behind music festivals like Dot to Dot, Splendour and the upcoming Beat the Streets charity music festival. To date, Beat the Streets has raised around £500,000 for Framework to help fight homelessness in Nottingham. However, these are just the tip of the iceberg, and in this interview we talk at length about some of the festivals and venues from the past, as well as George's favourite personal gigs and much, much more. The occasion for this interview was George was celebrating 30 years at the helm of the business. So Rock City originally opened before that in 1980, and it was his father, who was also called George Akins, who ran it. However, in 1994, George Sr. handed over the reins to his son, and George went on to acquire more venues, put on music festivals and dramatically expand the family business. This podcast is about an hour and a half long. It was originally recorded in October 2024 at LeftLion HQ. For anyone who wants to know a bit more about what it's like behind the scenes of so much music, we hope it's a fascinating listen.
Hi, this is Sophie from LeftLion, Nottingham's iconic culture magazine. Each month we publish a beautiful free magazine that shines a light on the art, music, food, literature and more that makes Nottingham such a vibrant and creative city to live in. It's a bit unusual for a local print magazine to exist these days, but we've managed to keep going for over 20 years, giving the city's artists, photographers and writers a platform to publish their work. We distribute 15,000 copies in over 300 venues across the county, and you can find LeftLion in every local library, every Castle Rock pub, in all active Nottingham leisure centres, and all the best bars, cafes and hangouts in Nottingham. If you're ever in town at the start of the month, you may have seen our LeftLion bike rolling around the streets. In line with our pledge to be a carbon neutral company, we deliver our magazines on foot, by electric bicycle or where strictly necessary by van. You can also read the full magazine and lots more for free at leftlion.co.uk. Check out the events listings on our website to find out what's going on in Notts, and if you'd like to promote your business or organisation with us, please visit leftlion.co.uk/advertise.
George, what was Rock City like before you took over it? Tell us a bit about what the place was like in the early days.
Well, I remember coming in probably to see, just to walk around the rooms. My oldest brother was working there in probably 1980 or 81, 82. Actually, I found a load of nightly reports that he wrote up from shows he worked on and sent him some photos of those the other day. And I remember going to Disco 2, which is beta now. And we used to have the DJ console was in the centre of the room. It was like a hexagonal DJ console and the dance floor was right around it. Just, I remember things like that really. It was an interesting time in those early days.
So I've been looking at some of the seminal early gigs before you took over. I'm just going to mention a few and just see if you've got any good stories from them. Firstly, that first ever Rock City gig, The Undertones.
Yeah, so that's a great way to start. But I remember when I was looking in the history and looking at the diaries from when we were supposed to open a couple of weeks before with Iron Maiden on the 1st of December 1980, and that didn't happen. I found out that it was because the electrics didn't get passed by the fire officer, and we weren't able to open. So we ended up opening with the Undertones a couple of weeks later. I think there might have been another significant gig that was missed in between those two as well that had to cancel because of the electrics. But yeah, the Iron Maiden one was and then they never played with Bruce. They played with Blaze in the in the mid to late 90s, I think I got a call to do an Iron Maiden show with Blaze Bayley as the front man, and that was pretty cool.
What else we got? REM in 1985?
Yeah, REM 84, and I wasn't there, but I know about it because it got voted one of the 100 greatest gigs of all time in Q magazine, and I can't remember when that came out, but it would have been probably in the mid to late 90s that was voted in the top 100 gigs of all time. And there's a bootleg recording of it somewhere, and Michael Stipe had lost his shoe in the audience, and there was a conversation about trying to find that. But as you know, it was a legendary show that some people say was the great gig. Although, if you talk to Anton, who I think was at it, he was like, it's a bit shit.
What about Guns N' Roses in 1987?
Oh yeah. So Axl had gone for a shower on his bus and got locked out the back entrance to the dressing rooms. So he had like his tiny little towel, like a hand towel, well, it wasn't a hand towel, but like a tiny towel, not a bath towel and he's wandering down the Talbot Street, and all the queues of people are outside waiting to get in for that night. He's coming and knocks on the door, and no one had let him in. He couldn't get in. It took him ages to get in, but eventually did. And what a great gig! 88, that would have been. I can't believe it. Got a feeling Skid Row with the support on that as well, so it's pretty cool. Cool time.
Nirvana.
Actually, no, it wouldn't have been Skid Row. Wouldn't have done that, because that was Skid Row when he moved together then. But anyway, yeah.
Nirvana, 1992.
Well, that was an incredible gig because they'd just blown up at the time. It was actually a Japanese TV show recording and interviewing them. There's a big piece on that evening where they were interviewed in what was Disco 2 back then, and you can see the audience coming in. I can see some of the old doormen that I used to work with working on the door, and actually Pearl Jam played a couple of months later, and then Faith No More a couple of months after that, and they were leaving messages for each other on the dressing room walls. So you had Nirvana leaving a message for Pearl Jam, and Pearl Jam leaving a message for Faith No More, and it's quite a legendary little thing going on the dressing room walls, which would have been great to have kept, but some cleaner came in and decided to paint over it one day, so we lost that.
Piece of rock heritage lost.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, it's a similar story with the Thekla, because there was a Banksy inside the venue as well as outside the venue, and when it got painted over in there as well inside the Banksy inside got painted over, which is quite depressing.
No. Rage Against the Machine in 1993.
Yeah, so they were booked into Disco 2 Beta now, and that's only like a 300 capacity venue, and sold out there. And they were, after they'd done that, they blew up, and we could have sold out the main hall many times over. They wouldn't move upstairs, so we just did the hot sweaty gig in the small room. It was incredible. Actually, we did the same thing with Marilyn Manson some years later, where they were booked in the small room, but we did move them upstairs. Actually, they didn't even play that show because the Manson had been at the Brits or something the night before, got off his head, turned up the next day, and just as we were letting everyone into the venue, about 10 minutes into letting people in the venue, he just told the tour manager to cancel the show because he basically was hungover. And a bit of a prick, really.
And I wanted to ask about Grace Jones as well, because I know obviously you were a kid when all these gigs were going on, but that one you were at.
Yeah, I was at that, so I definitely wasn't allowed in the building at that time. So I think I was in the back staircase, coming up the back staircase to try and watch it from the side of stage, and she was doing a costume change, and I was a very young lad getting a look at Grace Jones, and I apologised very profusely and turned around, but that was I'd have been about, 10, 11 years old back then or something like that.
So, okay, let's go back to Rock City 1994. You're 19 years old at the time, and suddenly, you've worked the bar a few times, but suddenly you handed the key to the venues.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't quite like that, but yeah, it was a I was actually on a year out. I was travelling in Australia, and I was due to stay out there and do a bit of travelling, you know, a bit of a gap year really. And my dad had fallen out with the managers at the time, and I got a phone call while I was only a few weeks into my travels, saying, "Oh, you need to get back, kid, and come and help me run the venue." So that's what happened back in '94. So I came back a little bit earlier than I expected to come and do that. But it was great. It was a real baptism of fire, having to learn how to do that from a very early age. But yeah, that's part of the joy. The great thing about Rock City is that, you know, it was, you know, even before me, it was the people that were running it was about music, and you know, it wasn't, you know, a corporate business. It was, you know, it was very much about alternative lifestyles and that, and allowed us to do what we did in those days.
So one of your first acts as the boss was to look at the basement, which had like a big understage rig in it. Did it at the time? Is that right?
There was a hydraulic dance floor, which I'm sure some people will remember. Used to be dancing in the main hall of Rock City, and you'd suddenly be raising up. So the dance floor would it was hydraulic, and all the system for that was underneath the main hall, essentially is where Black Cherry Lounge is now, and by taking that out and removing a load of the dressing rooms and backstage stuff, we were able to find quite a large space to create the rig at the time in '95, and that was the first thing I did after taking over Rock City was to convert that into another nightclub, and that was phenomenally successful for several years as a nightclub. We tried to do gigs in there, but the ceiling was just so low, and it didn't work. Every time you did a gig, you just got so many complaints, and people couldn't see the bands. I can't remember doing, I think,
Placebo, Stereophonics,
Moby. I'm not sure if Moby was in there, but it might have been Moby. I remember the Stereophonics night because we actually used to have to bring a PA in for the show. You wouldn't have a PA in house, so we'd have to hire a PA. And the first PA came, and it wouldn't work, so we had to get another PA. And there was a load of technical problems. We didn't get the doors open until 9 o'clock. Stereophonics were not happy. I tried to get them as drunk as possible after the gig to get them to forget about it, but I don't think they ever did.
I mean, I was definitely of the generation. It was that Britpop era, really, and the rig I've got so many memories of just discos in there, really. And I remember at Boxing Day, so I think there'll be a lot of people of my era that remember that very fondly.
Yeah, we had Monday night was Planet Earth. It was an 80s night. And Tuesday was like Crash, which was like an indie night, and then Friday and Saturday Friday was a 70s night, and the Saturday was a classic rock night. Yeah, it was. And they were all packed, for several years. And actually, that's probably how we got into doing Love Shack, really, because of the success of what we were doing on a Friday in the rig with Le Freak, the 70s thing. So that was a great time. Actually getting those club nights, really, really, really busy.
So since we're talking about club nights, I mean, they've always been an important part of Rock City. In 1997, you launched Love Shack, which might have been a bit controversial at the time. You had two rock nights, and you launched this kind of retro disco night in place.
Yeah, well, I mean, what had happened in the sort of, if you think about the rock night, the Friday rock night was, started in the wake of hair metal and Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and Bon Jovi and all that sort of music. And then in the Saturday night was more sort of a futurist goth, sort of more of a Fields and Nephilim, Sisters of Mercy sort of night. And as like Nirvana and Faith No More and Rage Against the Machine, there's a lot of blurring in the lines between alternative and rock. So we were finding that our Friday and our Saturday nights were becoming, populated by the same people, and we weren't able to really run two separate nights like that anymore. They would, and you had the advent of dance music, and that had probably become the second alternative stream of music that was out there. Whereas you used to have like, the futurist sort of stuff, the gothiest sort of stuff, and then the rock stuff, and they didn't, you had a different crowd, and then as that fused, and we just found that we were playing the same music on a Friday and a Saturday with some variations, that those club nights just started to dwindle, and you end up sharing your crowd between two nights. So we had to look at options to make those work. So we had La Freak running in the Rig, which was selling out by 11 p.m. every night with queues down the road, and it just and our Monday night, or Planet Earth night in the Rig on a Monday, was doing the same. So we just felt that we could design an 80s night in Rock City, and then we just suddenly got all of the people from the Palais wandering up on the week after. We just took all of that crowd into Rock City, which was not what Rock City was known for, and there was definitely some some concern from our regular punters that we did something like that, but it was necessary at the time to make sure the success of the venue.
I mean, Love Shack must have been one of the longest running club nights, because how long did it run for?
God, yeah. I mean, it ran for, a good decade or more. I mean, I think most of the club nights, you get a good decade out of us. I mean, a Thursday, although it's been called different things, essentially it's the student night. That's probably the longest running thing. I mean, that started in the mid '80s, and it's still going today, really. So it's just a variation on that. But we changed the name of it a few times over the years, but it's the same.
I think I remember it as Tuned. Is that
That's right? Yeah. I think it was Jeudi before that, and then Student Night was called before that. But essentially it's the same night. Just had some rebranding done. The Friday, I think, started out as a funk and soul night, and then became a rock night, and then became Love Shack, which is now Get Lucky. And then the Saturday started as a futurist night, then turned into an alternative night, and then became a rock night, and now it's called Rebel. It plays guitar music basically, and dance music. It's quite a broad Saturday night now.
So, in '96, you opened a sports bar called RKO, which I remember.
Yeah.
I didn't actually realise you were behind that. I mean, we're going to talk about what that became later on, but tell us a bit about RKO. I mean, I remember hiring snooker cues. You had loads of snooker tables.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, at that time there was sports bars were like unheard of. There was a sports bar opened on Haymarket in London called, I think it was, called the Sports Bar. And, that whole sort of televised sport going on satellite, and people wanted to go to the pub and watch it. Was, something, you'd have your local pub might have it with a small screen on, but no one was really doing it in the way that sports bar was on in London. And we felt there was a gap in the market, that we could, utilise that space and make it a big sports bar with amusement arcade machines, snooker tables, pool tables, and a bit of a student bar as well. It was it was great. Euro '96 is when we opened, and then we had the Lions tour of '97, and then it sort of did really well, and we were able to have satellite TV of the big games, and that made everything work really well. And we actually expanded that RKO into RKO 2, which is now Stealth. So you had like two massive sports bars, and we were showing the football bounced off a satellite from Norway on a Saturday in RKO 2 and RKO 1, and it was rammed every Saturday. And then Sky Sports got a lawyer to send us a letter to say you can't do that anymore, and that was the end of that, and actually it made it very difficult to make money out of it after that, and it was the sort of the start of the end for the sports bar, really, and plus everyone else had realised it's not that hard to put a big screen in the pub, and and everywhere had a decent sized screen before long, and it wasn't a business model that was hard for someone to copy, and you end up getting a lot more competition. So we had a few years out of that. It was pretty good, but obviously RKO is now Rescue Rooms, and that was sat there empty for about a year or so when Mole, one of our sound engineers at Rock City, said, come on over, George, come over here, let's have a look at RKO. And I went round with him, and he's like, look, that could be the stage. this could be the bar. This is how it could work out. And I think we could do a really good venue in here. And that was that was like, at the time, small gigs in Nottingham were hard to make work, and actually the social had really changed what had happened there. I mean, people used to go to the Charlotte in Leicester for the small shows, and then the social opened with the Heavenly Guys, and then it became clear there was a lot more touring acts at that size that could sell tickets, and we'd seen the Strokes and the White Stripes play the social, and it was doing quite well. So clear that we could make Rescue Rooms work. It was a slightly bigger venue. It fit the gap between the social and Rock City, we opened that in 2001, and that was incredibly successful. What it still is.
So what? Give us some personal favourite moments from the Rescue Rooms. I mean, you've mentioned like the Arctic Monkeys played there, right?
No, that was the social, or the Bodega. I can't remember if it was a Bodega gig or a social gig, but we operated both because we bought the social a few years into its history, and then we ran it as a social for a few years before we changed it to the Bodega. Arctic Monkeys was a great night. I had some great nights at the Bodega. Arctic Monkeys was a great one because we had this local band night called Big Track on a Monday, and the local guy, a local band guy, would book it, and then one day we just kept getting all these phone calls about this band playing on Big Track, and we're like, well, normally it's like it was 100 people tops come to that. It was like a local band thing. Your mates came along to support you, and you'd hope that those mates stayed on to watch the other bands. And this time the phones were ringing off the hook. The queue's outside all day, and it turns out it was the Arctic Monkeys, and we're like, and no one knew who booked it. And Anton rang me. He goes, "Did you book it?" I rang someone else, and we rang the Big Track guy. He's like, "I didn't do it." And there were 4 bands on there. Normally it's a 3-band bill, so no one really knows how it happened. We just think that they just decided to add themselves to our Monday night, did the show, and we were quite happy to oblige them. And that was the night, I think, we had every record company was there. I'm pretty sure that was one of the shows where the melee of record companies were trying to sign them, and it was an amazing show.
And you mentioned Anton there as well, so obviously he was running the Night with No Name.
That's right. Yeah, he ran it with Linda, who used to be a DJ at Rock City back in the 80s. And he was a local promoter, but also worked at Boots. He was an executive at Boots, and on the side he would be running his Night with No Name club and promoting business, and he booked the White Stripes and the Strokes at both at the social, I got him on board with me in when we opened the Rescue Rooms. So he's been with me since 2001 really. Yeah, and he's had some great shows over the years.
Then, so we talked about the Rescue Rooms. Then next it was another new venue that was formerly RKO2, Stealth, which you opened with James Bailey. Tell us about working with James and about the idea behind that venue.
Yeah, so that site was difficult because it was at the time it was a balcony around the downstairs. I mean, if you know Stealth now, it's 2 floors, but before we did Stealth, the downstairs was the main room, and upstairs was the balcony around it. I think at one stage in its history, when it was Mortimer's Tavern or something, it was 2 floors, and someone had said, "Oh, you can," at one time this was 2 floors. So that's when we sort of thought, "Oh, well, maybe we can do that again." And James Bailey was running the Bomb, and I think he'd I don't know what happened, but he was out of the Bomb and came to me with the idea of doing Stealth, we put that together and launched Stealth in, I can't remember what year it was.
2004.
2004.
Same year as LeftLion, I remember.
Right.
First back cover.
Okay. Had I already bought the social at that point? I think I bought the social in
According to my notes, which were prepared by the excellent Liz B, you bought it outright in 2005, but obviously you were involved in the social.
Yeah, no, I bought a building in 2005, but I think I had. I think I had it before then, but I can't quite remember. Such a long time ago. But yeah, the Stealth was, and James was involved with the social as well. James Bailey, and I'd known James for years from going back to when he was doing club nights at Venus and Papa Bins and stuff like that. And he was the guy that booked the best dance music in Nottingham, and all the greatest nights that people talked about were nights that James had put on either at Venus or Papa Bins, and so I was like, an opportunity to work. It was sort of fitted with what we were trying to be. We wanted to be a music. I wasn't really interested in doing sports bars and mainstream stuff. I was, very interested in doing stuff that's related to music, and I saw it as an opportunity to evolve what we were doing in guitar music into dance music, which was clearly another alternative scene that worked for us. So James came with the idea, and to be fair, it wasn't particularly successful. Like the first year or so, it was just you'd had some incredible nights, but there were so many bombs. And you're paying so much for some of these lineups, and we were like, God, you get you're trying to get 8 good club nights a month, and you were getting 3 good club nights, and then the other bunch you did were just losing money, and some of them were losing so much money, and it was just a horrifically hard first year learning about dance music and learning about what works and what doesn't work, and trying to find a way of making that business viable. And at the time, the Rescue Rooms was blowing up. The whole sleaze rock scene and just sleazy indie scene had just become so big, and Rescue Rooms was so popular. Or Saturday night Rescue Rooms was just like you couldn't get in. It was sold out so early, and I just went, let's just play dance music. And dance music also was fusing with indie music at the time. You had the Rapture, and you had too many DJs. There was just loads of stuff that sort of had some synergy with indie and dance music at the time, and Claxons, Block Party, all that stuff. And I went, right, well, we're just going to have 2 DJs, dance music DJs, electronic music DJs in Stealth on the upstairs, and we're just going to open the doors between Rescue Rooms and Stealth on a Saturday night, and if people go and dance there, then they do, and we're just going to play great dance music, and we're just going to pay a couple of great DJs, and they have to play all night. They're not going to. We didn't have headliners and loads of residents, and so it took about a year or so for that to really take off, and then the Saturday of Rescue versus Stealth just became massive. And then over the years, we've had periods where Rescue Rooms is the dominant force, and then we've had periods where the Stealth's the dominant force, and vice versa. And that patio is just where to hang out really on a Saturday night. Was fabulously successful. So so Stealth was really tough to start with, and it was a music genre I didn't really understand, and had to really learn it. And I've had some great people work for me over the years. Alex Kirkland, who still works for me now, was one of the very early members of staff on the bar there, and then working at Roxy, and then going back to Stealth, and he's a resident electronic music expert.
So 2006, this is the time where I think you bought your first venue outside of Notts. You've already mentioned it. It's called the Thekla, and it's a boat on the docks in Bristol.
Yeah.
Tell us firstly, what's the history of that venue? Because I know it had quite an interesting history. And
so it was originally called the Old Profanity Showboat. It was Viv Stansel of the Bonzo Dog Doodah band and his wife decided they wanted to do this theatre boat, and they bought it in Leeds and sailed it down to Bristol and set it up as a theatre, and and then one of the other guys that was part of their crew was a guy called Peter Jackson, not the movie director, and he at some point after Viv and I forget Viv's wife's name, I think her name was Vivian, and they essentially, Peter took it over, And then, you know, the lots of legendary things happened there. So all the great dance nights, a lot of the early trip-hop stuff was happening there. And, you know, it was just a legendary boat that was... but by the time I bought it sort of was falling on hard times. You know, the shine had lost its shine a bit. Still doing very well, but it wasn't quite, you know, as you know, cool as it once was. There was still a Banksy painted on the side of it, which originally was a big tag of just Banksy, his name written across the side of it, and then the Harbour Master came out and painted over it. So Banksy came out and painted a Grim Reaper and a rowboat to represent the Harbour Master being a Grim Reaper, and so that was on the side of the boat. And when I bought it, there was also a canvas inside, and I remember I'd spent so much on the boat, and the guy that owned it said, "Oh, you can buy the canvas as well if you want. Give me, I can't remember how much you wanted for it, but you know, it was significant sums, but nothing like what it's worth today." And I went, "Oh, you know what, keep it." And that was a bit of a poor business move, but at the time, you didn't know it was quite going to go as mental as it did. And we still had the Banksy on the side of the boat, which is really cool. And so it was the Heavenly guys who I worked with on the social in Nottingham. One of the guys from the Heavenly crew overheard a conversation in a pub that the owner of the Thekla might be considering retiring. So he rang me, and I got the guy's number, and you know, within a couple of months done a deal, and it was originally the Thekla social, and you know, as things didn't work out with the social guys, and we ended up doing just reverting back to the Thekla, and we've had an incredible but similarly to stealth, where you're trying to learn a new thing, learning about a boat was even more difficult, and all the things that can go wrong with a boat, and you know all the maintenance issues and things that happen just, you know, were a nightmare. I mean, just getting it back in the water after the refurb, and we'd got into the ballast tanks, and all the ballast tanks were just completely barnacled, and we just, you know, we were told it was going to take 6 months to clear it out. And I'm like, well, I need to be back in October for the start of term, and you've got 6 weeks, and that's it. And so we took the decision to fill the ballast tanks with concrete, which then has its own impact on the integrity of the hull, and all the ballasting that you can't do anymore, and so that, you know, and then just various things over the course of time. But the opening night, there used to be a hole from where the waste from the toilets was just pumped into the dock, and when we took it over, we were like, hey, we can't do that. We put some sewage tanks on the roof of the boat, and as the boat was as the people using the toilet, the tanks were on one side of the boat, so the boat was listing one way, and as the opening night was going, it was listing more and more because the tanks were filling up more and more, and we got to the point where it listed so much that actually the water line reached the old hole where they used to pump out all the piss and shit into the harbour, and that obviously came onto the boat, and we had to evacuate the boat on the first night. We thought we were going to sink.
Oh no!
And luckily we were able, the maintenance guy on there that lived right by where that tank was, put a hose in it, and we were fine. But yeah, that was an interesting opening night. And then, you know, only a few years ago we found that the whole hull, the integrity of the hull was just not going to hold up for much longer, so we had to build a new hull on the hull, which cost £1 million. It was just an incredible cost. So lots of things happened to make things difficult.
And I suppose the other thing that was difficult was it was in Bristol, and you know, you built this, you know Nottingham, and obviously music is very transferable, but you know, you'd lived in and born and bred in Nottingham, really, and first venue.
Yeah, I went on a school trip to Bristol, I think, when I was a kid, and loved it. And I think that's, you know, and I also always thought it's a similar sized town, and there's always a good vibe going on in Bristol. And that's what made me look at Bristol, really, and then, you know, we got the opportunity of the Thekla, so it just made sense. But going down there, I mean, doing that sort of stuff was just, I couldn't keep opening places in Nottingham. They're just going to rob pigs to pay Paul.
Yeah.
I had to look at other options, and my nature is just to, I might have 3 or 4 things going on at any one time. It's what comes off, and that's what I do next. And it's always about just finding opportunities, and as they come up, you take them. Or you don't. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But the whole, it's worked for me more often than it's not. Or it may not have worked to start with, like Stealth, but then ends up working for me because I've evolved and made it work.
So before we move on to chat about some of the other venues, give me some highlights from Thekla, especially for a predominantly, I guess, Nottingham audience that won't know it so well. I mean,
Thekla's just so sort of, the Banksy obviously is famous. I mean, actually, if you get a map, the local map of Bristol, it's prominently, the Thekla's on the map, and then, over the years, that some of the shows there just been, from dance music, from Portishead and Massive Attack and Tricky, everyone's played on there, all the club nights that they've had, and then, stuff that we found that we just constantly would get, like underplays, people wanted to do the shows in there when they were just massive. Like Crowded House's first gig back after they'd been away on hiatus for years, was on the boat. And,
wow.
Duffy did a similar thing when she was Ride Out High. There were just so many shows. Off the top of my head, I can't think of them right now, but there were many, many underplay shows. Joe Talbot of Idols was on the bar and did some DJing there, and who's who of everyone really from Bristol. That place is that's as legendary to Bristol as Rock City is to Nottingham.
Okay, so let's move on to 2009. This is where DHP start running tours for some emerging artists.
Yeah.
What was behind that decision, and tell us about some of the artists. I mean, there's one really, really big one, but there's quite a lot of really big ones, really, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, I think really what we found when we took over Bristol, we were booking shows in the Thekla, and we were obviously booking, at that time, we were already booking shows through, the Social, which was Bodega now, and Rescue Rooms in Rock City. And those shows then would be like, we then have, because we were doing them in Nottingham, we then started doing shows at the concert hall, shows at the arena. And in Bristol, we were doing shows at Louisiana before we did them at Thekla, and then after Thekla, we do them at the Academy. And so it was natural for us to then become a touring promoter. We were already renting venues. It was a very difficult thing to start organising, the systems in place that you need to do to become a promoter, all the cogs that make it work. It's pretty difficult. But once you've got it, once you can do it, it's a very hard thing for other people to do. And you get a reputation for being good at something. You'll find that the bands that start with you will stick with you. And we were doing the Dot to Dot Festival, which is a new music emerging talent festival. We were doing that in Nottingham and Bristol. So we were finding a lot of the acts that were playing that. We were like, okay, so we do shows in Nottingham and Bristol. And then from that, we started doing national tours. So I would be bands that I'd always done in Nottingham suddenly were like, falling out with their national promoters, because it was the start of Live Nation and some of the attitudes that came with corporate business, and back then bands were very much, you either took the money and went that way, or you were an independent. You were more of a champion of independence, which is what I was, and you had more agents who were into that at the time, and it was clear they were seeing the writing on the wall. Some agents were seeing the writing on the wall of what was happening with the big concert promoters from America. A lot of the agencies from America were buying the British agencies. There was a lot of consolidation, a lot of big business, big corporate stuff that was just making the industry change. And I was role placed at the time to benefit from a lot of artists that didn't want to do that. And I had, let's see, who did I do? In 2000, I had the Dropkick Murphys, the Human League, Flaming Lips, Children Breaks, Specials, and Nick Cave with Grinder Man. These are the early tours I got. I didn't do all the shows, but I would do lots of key cities. So I might not have London, but I would have Manchester, and I would be doing multiple shows on some of these tours. Some of them I do all of it, like Dropkick Murphys, Human League, and Children Breaks. I did all their shows, and that would grow. And then I was doing shows for New Order in like Manchester, and actually I don't do Manchester. I did Birmingham and Newcastle, Nottingham. I was doing like multiple cities on that, and it just grew. And I had some really key agents that supported me at that time. A guy called Paul Boswell, another guy called Ian Huffman. But the first guy that did it was a guy called Dave Chumley, who's actually passed away now. And yeah, I had some really key supporters at that time, which allowed me to build a concert business. And then we booked Ed Sheeran on Dot to Dot, and also we'd had him on a tour we were working on, which was Just Jack. Do you remember him?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so Ed Sheeran was supporting Just Jack, and we were us and another promoter called Kilimanjaro. So Kilimanjaro had the south and we had the north. So we were like Manchester, Nottingham, Leeds, Cardiff. We had those territories, and Kilimanjaro had London, Brighton, Birmingham, I think, and so it sort of exploded, and Dan Elam, who worked for me at the time, was the promoter from my company on that, and I remember speaking to the agent on when it was going clear it was going stadiums, and it was like, well, and at the time I could see London being because it wasn't our territory at the time. We were Manchester and everywhere else, so it's just like I planted the seed for it to be a co-promotion, and we us in Kilimanjaro ended up being combined promoters on that for the first 3 albums, and culminated in his homecoming shows. He did 2 nights around a park at 80,000 a day, and 2 nights, was it 3 nights we did in his in Ipswich at his park there, and we sold a lot of tickets, and it was a huge success for several tours, and a great learning curve, which it was great, and Ed's a lovely guy.
And I mean, not just him as well. There were other artists. Lana Del Rey.
Lana Del Rey. Yeah, I still have done her. I did her first ever headline show in the UK in Manchester at the Ruby Lounge, and I did her last ever proper headline show, if you don't include festival appearances, because she's done some headline festival appearances over the last few years. But last headline show that Lana did was in Liverpool, which I did at Liverpool Arena, which was a few years back, and then I had a tour booked for on the Norman Rockwell album, which he cancelled at the last minute, and so I'm hopeful that there'll be another tour. But there's been a lot of work on Lana over the years, doing tours that have never happened or ones that have, and she's one of the great artists of her generation. So I'm hopeful she'll be back doing some stuff. And then I do think people like James Blunt, and there's a lot of it's a relationship with him and Ed. And I still do all of James Blunt's touring, and we just got his Back to Bedlam reunion, his anniversary of his 20th anniversary of his classic album Back to Bedlam tour next year, and got an O2 with that. So some lots and lots of stuff. I do a lot of touring acts. It's, I can't remember how many we do a year, but across our venues and outside our venues, we're doing about 1,500 shows a year. So it's crazy. It's quite a lot of concerts.
2014, first venue in London, Oslo. Tell us about that place, and tell us what inspired the name.
So I mean, London was an obvious move at that time. We were becoming more of a national player, and with our concert touring, we were managing artists at the time. We were, and Hackney was, becoming, East London was just, becoming the place to be in for live music, and things were changing a bit. And I got the, I was actively looking for a venue in London, and fortunately I got a site in Hackney called, I can't remember what it was called, but it was the epicenter of the riots, if you remember those. I don't know what year that was, but then there was right outside the venues and videos of riots back then, and it was closed. It was a closed venue, and I got the opportunity of taking that on, and then we opened that. What year did we open that?
2014.
2014. Right. Okay, so that's 10 years ago, and I think it was probably earlier than that, but I thought it was 2013. But anyway, Oslo. The name comes from my mother's Norwegian. My mother's from Oslo. And that's why it's called Oslo. I love the 4 letters, the way it looks, and we really we were ready to open something really cool in London. We had a lot of people that that moved from Nottingham that we were able to have on our staff there, and it was a very really at that time there were a few venues in Manchester open that were doing like food and gigs, and it was just a little bit more upmarket than the sleazy gig venues we'd always done, and a little bit more older demographic, and so it was brilliant, and still is. It's just it's a great space, a great location, and that's Oslo. And after that we tried to buy all of the venues off Mama Group that imploded in a couple of years after that, and they had like the Jazz Cafe and the Barfly and the Forum and Borderline and Garage, and
so it was those last 2 that you did buy, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a whole corporate nightmare with Live Nation, and it was we got the availability to buy both the Borderline and the Garage. We actually had a deal done to buy all of them before Live Nation got hold of them. Live Nation, because AEG were going to buy the festivals that Mama Group owned, and we were going to buy the venues that Mama Group owned, and then there was a split in. I think I can't remember what happened, but AEG did something that made Live Nation want to sweep in at the last minute and outbid us basically. And then I had to wait maybe a year before I was able to buy some of the venues off Live Nation.
Right.
And so I ended up with the Borderline and the Garage and the Grace and the Borderline. Oh, I love the Borderline. I say that was just what a great venue and a great location, and I put some great shows on in there, and I really thought that was going to work, but I couldn't make it work. It was financially, it was too difficult, and as time went on, the landlords just became greedier and greedier, and it just became unattainable to it's just the rents were just you couldn't do it. You couldn't make it pay, and that's pretty much a pretty regular problem in London. One of the reasons why so many venues close is landlords can make more money out of a different type of operation than a venue, and if you haven't got any protection from rising rents, then that's a problem. So we weren't able to make that one work, but
the Garage is still going.
Yeah, the Garage is great. Again, it's it's difficult. It's a rented building. Most of our sites are freehold owned,
and the Garage you mentioned, it's got the Grace, which is the jet.
Yeah, so that's the upstairs room of the Garage, which is like 150 capacity, and it's named after the album Grace by Jeff Buckley. It's the
and Jeff played there, presumably.
Jeff played there in the I think in '94. Famous gig that he did there. It was his first headline show in England. Radiohead went to go and see that gig.
Yes.
And they left that gig, and that's what changed the sound from slightly from what they were doing on Pablo Honey
To OK Computer.
To OK Computer.
There was actually a really good podcast about this. I think it was. It was
the Bends. It would have been the Bends. Yeah. So it was. I think they went and they wrote "Fake Plastic Trees."
Yes, you're right.
After that gig, and that was a massive inspiration for that song and that album. And that was we named the venue Grace, and it's got its own little bar and gig upstairs. It's like one of the the go-to 150 capacity venues in London. A lot of acts have had their first shows there. We've had some great Babadoobie, and just so many shows have been in there, and we'll, as time goes on, you'll see some wonderful moments that venue will have.
There's a little tip to our listeners. There's a great podcast on Six Music at the moment, which is about Jeff Buckley, hosted by Guy Pearce, and I think they mentioned the gig that you were talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I've only just put two and two together. That's your venue, George.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of my favourite records of all time. That album.
It's amazing.
I remember the Sony rep.
I think it's an anniversary of it at the moment. Is it like 30 years?
Yeah, it would have been 94. So it would have been 30 years anniversary of that album. So I remember the Sony rep at the time. So we used to have like record company reps, go and meet with venues, trying to get you obviously to play their music in the venues and do album playbacks. It's a little bit different now with the way they do the rough trade, in stores, and that's how they do stuff now. But back then you used to have album playback nights, and you'd have the reps in the area trying to make sure that the DJs are playing their songs and all that stuff. And the rep from Sony at the time, I remember she was a great girl, and she's from Birmingham. I forget her name, but really nice girl. And she gave me Jeff Buckley's Grace and Alice in Chains' Jar of Flies. I remember and they were staple diets of mine for a few years. Those records, really great.
We know it's hard having to wait a whole month in between LeftLion magazines. Heck, it's difficult enough getting through the week. Worry not, listener, we've answered the call. You can get a pithy, up-to-date digest of the best stuff going on in Nottingham each week direct to your inbox every Wednesday by signing up to the LeftLion Weekly newsletter. LeftLion Weekly contains our top recommendations of events, new content, exclusive competitions and more besides. So what are you waiting for? Visit leftlion.co.uk/newsletter to sign up now.
So let's talk a bit about festivals. What I'm going to do now, I've collated a list of what I think is most, but it's probably not all the festivals that you guys have put on. And I'm going to say the name of it, and then I want you to say 3 or 4 sentences. So these are, quick answers, I guess.
Yeah.
Some of which our listeners will know, but some they might not. So firstly, City in the Park.
Okay, so that was a reference to Rock City in the Park, and it was our first stab at outdoor gigs, festivals, but they would, it was like mainly one-day things. The first one was with the Saw Doctors. The second one was with the Cause, and the third one was with Bryan Adams, which actually we had to move from Woodland Park to the Embankment because of Foot and Mouth. And that year was the first year that we started doing some other festivals, because we had originally the first 3 were all one-day events, and then the Bryan Adams year we ended up adding.
So you had Extreme 2000?
Extreme, that would have been 2000 then. So Extreme 2000, which was Dropkick Murphys Less Than Jake. It was like what Slam Dunk is now, but we were doing it at the time that was current, essentially.
The Longest Day?
Longest Day was like more of a what we Bearded Theory is probably now. You know what I mean? It was much more about classic alternative music, and so the Wonder Stuff and New Model Army, I think, were on that one. Actually, it was an idea that Mike Peters from The Alarm. Yeah, and the name The Longest Day was because I was looking back in the archives of Rock City, and the DJs used to run in the 80s who were massive New Model Army fans, and Jonathan and Mark Spivey and people like that, and they had like an all-dayer they called The Longest Day, and I thought that would be a great name for that festival. So that's where that came from.
So 2001, Distortion.
So that was an evolution of Extreme. So Extreme was pop punk festival, but the name was sort of owned by the agent for Less Than Jake, and so we just called. And we had a club night, Rock City's Saturday night at the time. It was called Distortion because it was a rock alternative night. So I thought, we'll just tie up the Saturday night Rock City brand with the festival brand, Green Day, Iggy Pop.
I mean, Green Day headlining.
Yeah, Green Day, Iggy Pop, 100 Reasons. It was again, and actually, if we'd have pulled it off, the year after was supposed to be Offspring.
Right.
So that would have given us 3 years and 2 of the big headliners, and it would have solidified a brand that would have allowed us to continue on doing a great rock festival. But Offspring just weren't able to make the dates work for us, and we weren't able to continue that on. But that was the idea, and all those events lost money. Every one of them, everyone you just mentioned, not one of them made money. Those because 1,000 tickets are 25 quid a ticket is a lot of money, and the ancillary spend related to those 1,000 people, and if you miss by 1,000 people, you're losing a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we were so close so many times, but didn't quite make it. And I think the worst one we had was the year after the Distortion. I think
So I didn't have a note there. I mean,
I think we had one with the All Saints, and it was just a disaster. Rowan Keating came on the last minute just to give it some sales, but it was financial disaster, and I just went, after. It's like Definition Madness, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
I didn't realise you'd done a pop festival, George.
Yeah,
I'll annex this when I do the outro and find out what the name of that was.
Yeah, that was City in the Park, I think.
Oh, that was City in the Park.
Yeah,
right,
I think it was a City in the Park, because that hadn't really. It all molds into one back then. It was like late 90s, early 90s.
Well, then 2005 comes Dot to Dot. That's the first Dot to Dot. And
Yeah.
obviously that continues to this day. It's 20 years old next year.
Yeah, 20 next year. Yeah. So that was that was great. So we'd been to South by Southwest had been around for a long time at that time, but actually hadn't really been on UK's radar, I suppose. And or anyone's really just that whole Metropolitan Festival idea had been done for years in Texas, but no one was looking at it as an idea to bring over here. So we were looking, because we own so many venues in one city, it was an obvious thing for us to do. And actually it was, I don't know if you remember a thing called Liars Club back in the day, and Ricky Haley.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
So Ricky Haley and a guy called Gavin, I forget his surname, but Gavin and Ricky they come to us the idea. Anton and I were looking at doing a multi-venue festival, and Ricky and Gavin were also wanting to do a multi-venue festival, and so they wanted. Obviously we had the venues, and we were looking at the ideas and how we were going to do it, and they were also doing the same thing. So they came to us with their idea, and we were already thinking about it. But Ricky and Gavin came up with the name and some of the branding, and it was. That was the start, Dot to Dot, we just started in Nottingham one day. The first year was just Stealth and Rock City and maybe The Social, and I think the headliner was, I want to say Ladytron, but I don't think it was Ladytron. It was, I forget who it was. And then it grew from there. We tried 2 days in both in Nottingham, and I think we did 2 days in Bristol as well. But we definitely did 2 days in Nottingham, and then we did Bristol as well. That's just the go-to new music festival, and it's been we were one of the early people that do that in the UK. I don't think anyone else was doing stuff like that at the time. And Great Escape's around now, and you've got so many cities that do it. But at the time, it was just really us doing it, and pretty cool.
Then Splendour started in 2008.
Yeah, so that was because so John Collins and the events team at Nottingham City Council. I went to them with the idea of going, look, I think there's space for new music, not new, for the International Music Festival in Nottingham with international big acts, but I didn't have the appetite to take 3 or 4 years it needed to establish and build and finance, so I and at the time, I think that the city council they really wanted to have it as a great cultural event for Nottingham, and it sort of made sense. We both wanted to do something, and it was important to the council to make it really affordable for city residents. And it was really important for them to have something that was really mixed for the families, so that we were really trying to hit the all the demographics, and just deliver a great music festival for the city. And I think we did that, but it took time to make it work. And I knew it was going to take time from my experiences of doing City in the Park and all the other ones. It required a level of backbone and finance to be able to establish it, and then obviously the Great Financial Crisis happened around the same time, and the City Council, obviously about their financial position. Everyone knows about it now, but it was clear at the fairly early days of Splendour that there was a period, we had a couple of years where, and they were like, we can't take the risk anymore, so we had to take it on, and we became essentially the promoter of that event, but with some support from the city council, and over the years we made that really great. I mean, you had a difficult year this year, and I don't know if you reported on that, but
yeah, obviously it wasn't on for the first year in a long time, and
yeah. So just a real disaster of bureaucracy, basically.
That's not like our city council, is it?
But no, I mean, to be fair, it's just it's a difficult situation. You've got to have some sympathy for the position that everyone's in. But I mean, it was just ridiculous, and everyone from our end and their end knew it was ridiculous.
Yeah,
but it was
well, essentially, I mean, from what I read, and I think I read your statements, they basically made you re-tender for the work you'd already been doing, and prolonged it for so long that it made you unable to put it on,
basically.
Even when
basically, essentially the delays and the indecision didn't allow us to get the event on, and obviously we lost the year. So anyway, but the good news is we had a bit of that in COVID as well, and we've been able to get a deal done with the council. They wanted it. They want it. It's not for lack of them wanting it. It was just it's well documented, the issues that they've had, and and this was a casualty of that basically, and we all want it. We all want it to happen. We all want it to work. So that's what we're working towards for 2025.
Hit the deck. 2011.
Yeah.
Till when? It was a few years. I know it's not running now. It ran for a few years, didn't it?
Yeah. We had it. I think it was 4 events. And again, we tried it in Bristol and Nottingham.
Skater punk. That was the kind of.
Well, it was again. It was we were what is now Slam Dunk was. They'd happened. I don't know if we started the same year or they started the year after us, but we essentially Amy, who books Rock City, it was her idea, and she put that together. It was a great festival, very similar to Dot to Dot, but for rock music, but for alternative rock music, and it was brilliant, but. We just found that the cost of the acts compared to what we could charge for the ticket, it required to then grow in the way that Slam Dunk did, which is just get bigger and bigger. You almost had to you had to jump from the venue, the budget that you can make it work with the venues, it required you to then jump to a much bigger stage, of which Slam Dunk did very well, and we were unable to. So. It had some great events, but sadly just it wasn't financially viable to make work in the long run.
So the next one I'd never heard of until I researched it. It's Gathering Festival 2012.
Yeah, Gathering would have been in Oxford again.
Oxford,
similar,
right, yeah.
Similar to Dot to Dot. We were just trying to do new music. We were finding ways. Don't forget, we were trying to compete to get artists, and what the way that you become a promoter for an artist is getting them at the beginning, giving them great shows in good destinations, and the more you give to an artist, the more likely you are to do it. Things have changed considerably over the last couple of years because we now have a big corporate giant in the world, and that is hoovering the world, everything up, and making it very difficult for what it was the status quo of, like, if you're a promoter and you do that band at the start, as long as you're doing a good job, you continue to do that band. That was definitely and we were doing events like The Deck and Dot to Dot and Gathering, and we were putting on some really cool stuff. I mean, actually another one I don't think you got on there is the Massive Attack thing that we did in Filton.
We should definitely talk about 30,000 people, right?
That's right, yeah.
2019, that was when it was.
2019, that was incredible. So Bristol, obviously, that we had we have a venue in Bristol. We have connections in there, but Bristol's a great selling city for concerts. But it only has, the Academy. At the time, the Colson Hall, which is now Beacon, had closed for major refurbishments, and it seemed to be closed forever. We're like, okay, what's going on with the arena? There's still not an arena there. They're building one, but at the time, I was like, I got an intro to the mayor down there, and went to have a meeting about, is there some way we can do like a pop-up arena? And we went out to. They went, well, just really glad you came in, because we've been considering moving our arena project from city centre out to Filton, and so we went out to see Filton. They had a huge hangar there. That's where I think the arena's going to end up being. And we looked at this hangar, and me and another guy that worked for me at the time were looking at it and going, well, who could fill this? Or maybe Massive Attack. Let's just put a call in and see if we can do it. And just so they were doing the mezzanine tour, they were up for something interesting and a different idea. Massive Attack always up for interesting different ideas. And then so we pretty much did a deal, but then it became apparent that we couldn't use the hangar because the hangar got planning, and because of the controversy with the moving of the arenas, there was no likelihood anyone was going to make the decision to give us planning because it was just too controversial. So Filton Airfield, which is right next to it, which is where Concorde was built and done, it was a disused airfield, was literally over the road, but it was in Gloucester City Council's district, so we got a license from them, and then we built this hangar, which had been originally designed for Creamfields. So it was a big dance music hangar, and then we had a lot of problems with Live Nation during that, because they tried to stop the people renting it to us, and there was all dirty games going on from the big ugly giant that's Live Nation, but we pulled it off. We did 2 nights in an airfield, disused airfield, in the back end of winter. It was like before the year before, I think it had snowed that weekend, so it was a real risk. But we pulled it off, and parking was limited. There was a lot of buses we had to do. It was an incredible event, and really proud of that one. Yeah.
Right, I'm just going to go through a few more of these festivals, and then so No Tomorrow. I remember that one. Electronic Festival. One day at Wallington Park.
No Tomorrow. That was
London Grammar, right?
London Grammar. Was that the first? No, was that the first year we did? I can't remember. Yeah, we did a couple of them, and so it's sort of like. Problem was that we were running again. So you had Detonate Festival, and you had us, and we were trying to do our thing, and they were trying to do their thing, and we were in Wallington Park doing our, live music, but with an electronic edge, and it was sort of end of the student term, and that's how it worked, and we were, but by year 3 we were competing for the same artist, So we, good old Detonate, but they essentially had a period of time where they had a great event over at College Park.
Yeah. Mirrors? I've never heard of Mirrors Festival.
Mirrors, yeah, London. It's a multi-venue. Another thing where we're trying to give bands their first shows, and so we had what we do in Nottingham and Bristol, and we were doing Manchester as well for Dot to Dot. So Dot to Dot was those three cities. So we were trying to find a London play, and Mirrors is essentially our version of Dot to Dot in London and around Oslo in Hackney, and there was some venues there, and we created a multi-roomed day festival on Halloween basically, and some really great events with that, but again very hard to make that work financially. Actually this year we did this incredible thing actually in Dalston at just off Kingsland Road. We call it Society Exists on Gillette Square, and basically we put a free party on for like 5,000 people in a party in London, and that was great. Scott Kennedy, who works for me, is one of the promoters down in London, and he pulled that off. That was incredible. High Viz headlining and loads of a real mix of great artists and a real punk attitude, real DIY punk attitude. It was just great.
So I'm going to get to Beat the Streets in a minute, but I want to tackle that separately. Finally then, Bearded Theory, which you recently existed before you guys were part of it.
Yeah, I think it may have started around the time we started Splendour, 2008, 2009. And
has it always been in Derbyshire? It's Catton Park, isn't it?
No, it's not always been at Catton Park. It had started in a pub, like a pub garden, and then it moved to another site, and it had been in Catton for maybe 5 years or so when we bought it. Again, it's like everything. There's always looking for opportunities all the time, and Bearded Theory is one of those events where, I initially saw it as something that I knew a lot about musically. I promoted a lot of bands. Worked with a lot of the people that went to it originally were people that would be very much rock city people, and but I saw they were changing the way they were booking it towards just before the pandemic. They were getting some really great lineups together, and so I was admiring from afar, I suppose, and we were finding that it's the sort of thing that we'd like to have done really, and anyway they announced after the pandemic that they weren't going to do an event when it felt like they should have, and that sort of piqued my interest. Or maybe they've had enough or whatever. So I called the owners, and I was able to do a deal to take over that event, and it was just a lovely community, right up my street musically, and so we were able to really take that on and make that. I've loved doing it because it's like a proper a festival where you're camping and you're able to do so much more than just music, and there's so many people are there for the whole weekend. We actually start on Wednesday now, and you've got to have so many things going on. Creatively it's a great experience to be involved in.
Well, I've seen that you've now announced the headliners, which I did pick your brain about recently. Was Iggy Pop, Manic Street Preachers, and it's kind of known for good food, good beer, those kind of things.
It's
really nice to see Black Iris have a big truck there. That kind of thing.
It's just a great weekend. It's probably it's a great festival, and but so many things I might on my way to do for work, and I'm like you have levels of anxiety and worry and stress, but as I tried to Bearded Theory, knowing it's going to happen, I'm just I'm so looking forward to it. I'm just looking forward to a great weekend, and I actually just get involved. I just enjoy it. I'm just so lucky to have a wonderful team that are able to put it on, so I can be a bit of a wreck out of that.
So Beat the Streets, I wanted to talk about it separately. It started in 2018. I mean, and this one's one that you basically, all of the money, the bar money, the merch money, everything goes to charity, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's raised £400,000 so far, is that correct?
I think we're peaking on 500,000 now.
500,000?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, tell us, what inspired it, firstly?
Well, I mean, I suppose, for many years, you'd walk around Nottingham, you just didn't see a great deal of homeless people. It just, it was not particularly noticeable. I probably didn't even think about it, And then, as things started to clearly change post great financial crisis and all the cuts that the government had to make, and that was clearly having an impact on people in the streets, and there was an explosion in the amount of people that were sleeping rough and struggling, and vulnerable people, clearly vulnerable people. It wasn't just just people that have chosen to be on the streets. It's people that have found themselves in a really hard times, and so that became something just obvious to me, that there was issues. And I remember I was on a taxi in London, and it was one of those long taxi journeys. I was coming from a late night gig. I think it was Hammersmith. I had to come all the way back to Hackney, and I was talking to the taxi driver, and I think he was like, so what are you concerned about? And I think I was having this conversation, just saying, I've noticed a lot more homeless people, and we were talking about it on the journey. I got to the end of the journey, getting out of the cab. Just before I got out, he says, so what are you going to do about it? And I got on the train back to Nottingham the next day, and that sort of resonated with me. And I went, oh well, yeah, maybe I can do something. And I called John Collins. Went to meet with him. He's got it's an important cause for him as well. And I spoke to him about what's going on. And, essentially it's cuts. Essentially people like Framework just don't have the funding that they used to have, and all the adult social care have been cut. There's just so many cuts, and therefore that's what's happening here. What's the black hole? How do we? How much are we talking here? And I went to meet with Framework and went round, did the street outreach to see, people at 3-4 in the morning, and see people that are genuinely homeless, and the significant issues that come with that. And there were also a lot of people that had no recourse to public funds, because if they're not from the UK, there's a lot of Polish people. They can't. The only thing that they can access is money to be sent back to where they're from. So that was a significant thing I wasn't aware of, and so I just said, what can we do? And a lot of the people, the directors at my company, and the staff that work for me, and it was something everyone cared about. So I said, well, so many of these charity events that happen once in a while, they just and at the end of the day they can only make so much, because they're not taking the bar, they're just essentially selling the tickets, and whatever profit they make they give to the charity. And as venues, all you're doing is you're giving them the venue for free and trying to support them in that way. And I just felt, well, I tell you what, if I took all my venues out for a night, and not only do I give the money from the door, but I also give the money from the bar, from the merchandising, from if staff want to work and donate their wages for the night, and a lot of that happens. And
I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. So it was I didn't know whether we were going to be able to Sleaford Mods cancelled a holiday to do it. Jake Bugg rang us. We didn't ring him. We'd rang him a couple of years, so can you do it? I'm in Australia or whatever he was. And one year he just rings up and goes, I'm free this year, I'm doing it. Where do you want me? What do you want me to do?
Amazing.
And that's, the music community in Nottingham has just, got so behind this event. People will cancel holidays and make sure they're free to do it, and that's just really important, and it makes it a lot easier for us to be able to stage it, because you've got some significant artists that can go with it. We were also quite certain we were aware that the Hustle was happening in October. We didn't want to upset what they were doing, which is a great causes as well. So we spoke to them about make sure that we go on sale definitely after their event, tried to not clash with that at all. And I think it works in harmony really, and it's a great event for local musicians, and it raises a significant amount of money, and we've been able to support various things over the years that we've done that. Most of the money goes towards building flats now, and actually quite a lot of our money then leverages more government money. So that's one of the great things that we're able to do is by framework being able to get private money to support their
funding business,
their funding necessities. The government go, well, if you can find that, we'll match fund, or so we've been really useful to the way we've done things to go, right, well, that money's for that, and then my brother and I top it up a bit as well, so it's significant money we're able to raise every year, and hopefully we can keep doing that.
Right, I've got to ask about the Palais as well. Obviously, you've just taken that on, and it's kind of like what a romantic gesture as well. This building, it's just up the road from the LeftLion office. It's about to enter. Well, it was 98 years when it was closed. It's 99 years now that you've reopened it.
Yeah.
So next year it's 100th years. Tell us about that. There must be quite a lot of challenges. What are your hopes for it, and what are the challenges?
Oh God. Well, look, it's all my career it's been my competition. Nightclub wise. I know you would probably say that we're very different, Rock City and the Palais, and we are. But we've had our competition over the years. For students or for Love Shack or whatever, and they've done things that trying to compete with us. Big ska gigs and punk gigs and stuff like that. So there's we've always been the two grand old dams of Nottingham, haven't we? The Rock City and the Palais. I know you've got MGM Ocean, whatever it's called these days. But they're under a CPO for whenever Broadmarsh happens. So there's
one night a week for students.
Yeah, exactly. And at some point that's going to be turned into whatever's going to happen with that area of the town. So really, it's about Rock City and the Palais, and obviously new nightclubs open and things change and it's a space that is important entertainment space in Nottingham, and it was there, sat there. God knows what was going to happen to it. So for us, we were like, okay, there are serious challenges in Nottingham nightclub life, and we felt that we could do something good there, and we've given it a lick of paint, put a stage in, and we're trying to do events there at the moment, and we'll see how that goes, and we've got some some really great events we've had, and we've got some coming up, and I'll launch the space and see what we do.
How many gigs do you think you've watched in your lifetime?
Watched?
I know. You're not going to be able to quantify that, but it's.
I remember. I think in the sort of 97, 98 time, I remember saying to myself, "I'm just going to watch every gig that plays at Rock City. I'm just not going to, I'll kick myself in years to come that I didn't watch those bands. Mm-hmm. I remember David Bowie played. I probably only saw 3 songs.
Yeah. 97, wasn't it? With the big sofas.
And I think that was probably the reason I went, you know what? I watched like 3 songs. I'm gonna watch the gigs, and I watched and not all the way through. I'd have to do work, obviously, but I would make an effort to not sit in an office when a band was on, and if I'd never heard of them, I'm gonna go and watch it. If the support band's on, I'm gonna go and watch them, and. So yeah, a lot, How many? I have no bloody idea.
I reckon it's in 5 figures, I reckon.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot.
So give us, like, I don't know, a top 3, or, you know, and it doesn't have to be ones you've put on either.
Yeah, no, I mean...
What are the ones that have blown you away?
The ones that have blown me away. I mean, Massive Attack was an incredible night. I was actually, as an achievement, a working achievement, and what they did and how we did it was just incredible. And there are those moments where you stand on stages in front of monster crowds, you know, and okay, you're not performing, but you can stand on the side of the stage and just look out and go, wow, that's pretty cool, you know, when you've done, you know, 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium, or, you know, 30,000 people at Woolworth Park, or 15,000 people at Filton Airfield with Massive Attack, or even, you know, smaller shows, and just, you know, this is great. This is what most people dream of. You know, I get to do this for a living. It's great. And but great gigs that I've seen, I've loved to watch, have been in my venues or I've been involved with. Probably the best is Queens of Stone Age, supported by Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. I can't remember the year. It was when Radio 1 came in to do One Live.
Oh yeah, I remember. And you had
there was a great series of shows that week. DJ Shadow was an incredible show that week. But probably the best one was Queens. And I'd done Queens of Stone Age shows before, and we couldn't. I mean, they were one of those bands that everyone loved, but you couldn't sell any tickets in the early days. And then you know, Songs of Death came out. That was on the Songs of Death tour, and that was just an incredible show. So that's probably my favourite gig. Seeing like a lot of the gigs I've seen at the Social or Bodega have been incredible over the years. Doves, Strokes, White Stripes that Anton put on, Editors, all in that small room, some really great. Zulu, which was a fucking incredible hardcore band. I didn't know very well, but someone dragged me along. That's just fucking brilliant. Ferocious Dog in there as well, brilliant. And so some great shows in the Bodega. Rescue Rooms, Libertines, The Killers. So I was just trying to think of some of the shows in the Rescue Rooms that have just been amazing, but there have been so many. But yeah, some really cool shows there. The Vines, a lot of that sleaze indie stuff that was, you know, we were known for in that early noughties. Some great shows. Mumford and Sons as part of Dr. Dot played in there. Was that in there? No, it might have been Rock City actually. That might have been Rock City they played. And then Rock City, just, you know, so many great shows. Bowie, I only saw a few songs, but it was pretty amazing. I remember when they did Under Pressure, because actually at the time we thought they were going to do because his album was the Earthling album, that was a tour, which is sort of dancey, drum and bassy sort of record that he did. And we all thought that that's what he was going to do, you know, just because he's playing a club, he's just going to play his new album, you don't have to put up, it's his way of not having to play the hits, but he didn't, he played the hits. It was just an incredible show. The Cure in there was incredible. Blur, that was a night Beetle Bomb went to #1, that was an incredible show.
What was that?
Deftones, great show. Just trying to think. Massive Attack, Tricky.
I remember I was at a Tricky gig once at your place actually.
Is that the one
He
when he
walked the
walked
Kit Kat. He said something about a Kit Kat and then walked off.
Yeah, well, I got him back on stage because he actually went down into catering, and then I was actually not upstairs at the time that happened. So you were there when you heard the Kit Kat.
Yeah.
Someone told me something about Kit Kats, but I didn't know what it was. All I knew is he'd left the stage and we had a full room, and it was only like 2 or 3 songs into the show, and he was sat in the catering area, just really pissed off with his band. I don't know what had gone wrong, but he was just fucking ranting about his band. And I just sat there next to him and I went, mate, fucking, you know, there's 900 kids in there that want to see you, you know, get over it.
Yeah.
And he sort of got his shit together and went out and did the gig, you know. But, you know, there's all sorts of moments where nightmares happen. You know, see, who was it? Pulp, 95. the fuse was the fuse went. And at the time we just too much power. We didn't have enough power to power what we were doing at Rock City. We just put air conditioning in, and just every time we had the spike in power, fucking the whole place just stopped. And there was a period of about 6 months where we just kept, whenever we were really busy, all the power went off. So we had to build a substation eventually. But it happened at right at the peak of just as they were going off for encores, the power cut, and then we got the fuse, and it was 1961, the fuse, and it's written on old fuse. We were able to get it going again. They completed the show, but that happened on Hull. A similar thing happened on Hull, and Courtney didn't quite take it the way that Jarvis did. Jarvis took it in his stride and dealt with it. Courtney went fucking mad. And again, the show did happen. It was fine. And but there was a couple of minutes of a power failure, and I can't remember if she went back on or not. But Holt did. Right now, I'm not sure Holt did. Anyway, interesting nights.
So, what's next for you and DHP Family?
Well, like I say, I've always got irons in several pies, and fingers in several pies, irons in many fires. I'm always looking at an opportunity, and I might have 2 or 3 things I'm looking at any one time, but I'm always there's always so much to do. I mean, there's so many staff now, there are so many operations, and there are so many things that require.
How many staff are there in total?
450 or something like that. You obviously got
about half them in Nottingham, and
maybe more than that. And, but there's a lot of salary staff.
Yeah.
And
it's a big old operation, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a great. So there's lots of things always happening. There might be, you might be doing great one part of the business and not so well another part of the business, and it's very rare that everything's working at any one time. It's so nice when everything's working. And getting out of the pandemic was a crazy time, and so many things going on. And we actually thinking about the pandemic, we ended up doing a load of gigs at the Arboretum just to find a way of keeping people alive.
Which led to things like Foolhardy Folk Festival and
that's
others.
Right, yeah, totally. That's so cool. That Foolhardy Folk Festival is a great one. And actually, we now do a takeover of one of the stages of Bearded Theory with Beans on Toast. He does a Foolhardy takeover of the meadow, the woodland at Bearded Theory, which is quite cool.
So, okay, last question. What about you? Music's obviously this massive part of your life.
Yeah.
But what do you do when you're not doing that? What do you do to relax away from all this? Do you ever get that chance?
Yeah, I mean, look, I sort of do all sorts of stuff. I'm always I get itchy feet. I'm quite I bounce around a lot. I've probably got ADHD or something, but I just I'm always up for travelling, and I surf a bit, I ski a bit. I'll be into something or other, for 6 months, and something or other for another 6 months. Suddenly I'll be into gardening, and then I'll be into, I don't know, driving go-karts or something, and I skydive for a bit, and I try. I like to just keep doing stuff. I like extreme sports. It's probably my go-to thing that I do, and I try and learn new things all the time, which is I quite enjoy doing that.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, just keep up the great work with LeftLion. We love it. It's.
Thank you. Well, keep up the great work with DHP, really, and all the things you do in Nottingham. I mean, I guess one thing that I'd like to say finally is I think obviously DHP can seem like this massive organisation in Nottingham, but the scale you operate on, and you've mentioned Live Nation and others, you're actually just an independent fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
And it's a combination to you that Rock City is still called Rock City and not the Carling Rock City or the mobile phone sponsor here, Rock City.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't see a great deal of sponsorship on our staff. It's just not not in our DNA really. It's all we like to be rock and roll and okay, we'll do some stuff that isn't rock and roll sometimes, but that's the essence of the company and so many people have contributed to that over the years. It's been brilliant.
For 2 decades and nearing 200 printed issues, LeftLion magazine has shone a light on Nottingham's culture and entertainment scene. We believe we are part of what makes the city unique. Not many others in the country or world have a free independent press like us. LeftLion is Nottingham's meeting point for information about what's going on in our city, from the big companies and issues to the grassroots, promoters and community organisations. Our printed magazine is free to access for all and we believe it's important it stays like that. However, we are increasingly relying upon donations from our readers to continue what we do. If you'd like to support our work, then you can do so by making a monthly pledge at Patreon/LeftLion. By pledging just £2 per month, you'll help make a real difference and will receive the digital copy of our magazine before it's available in town or on our website. If you pledge £5 per month, we'll also print your name or the name of a loved one, your band, your small business or your pet in each issue. If you can support us with a pledge of £10 per month, we'll also send you each issue through the post, and you'll receive an art print of the cover with each copy, plus occasional other free gifts too. For more details about supporting LeftLion, please visit patreon.com/LeftLion.
So there you go. A very frank and heartfelt conversation with George Akins, the man behind DHP Family, Rock City, Splendour and much more. So this isn't the first interview I've done with George, as you might have gathered from us chatting. It's been featured in LeftLion magazine several times in the past, and speaking as someone who spent their teenage years at Rock City, it's always fun to hear more from him about what goes on behind the scenes. If you haven't already got your tickets for Beat the Streets Festival, I would highly encourage you to do so. It takes place on Sunday the 26th of January 2025 across 5 different venues, and acts playing include Evil Scarecrow, Jaya Had a Dream, The Hoplites and Riding the Low, which is a band fronted by the actor Paddy Considine. Advance tickets are only £15 and it's always a great day out and a chance to see the next big thing. Plus all of the ticket money goes to charity and all of the bar money and all the other bits too. Following that, Dot to Dot Festival will take place in May, this year celebrating its 20th year with acts like The Horrors, Girl Band and Fat Dog, all at Nottingham venues. On the same weekend over in Catton Park, Derbyshire, DHP Family are also putting on Bearded Theory with Iggy Pop, Manic Street Preachers, Sisters of Mercy, Yard Act, Left Field and much more. So that's going to be quite an intense weekend for anyone who works for DHP Family. Then in July you've got the return of Splendour Festival in Woollerton Park. At the time of recording this, we don't know who's playing, but in the past they've had massive indie and pop acts and we're sure you can expect the same kind of family atmosphere again. There's also the small matter of that 100th anniversary of the Palais nightclub coming up in April. We'll be doing some coverage of that in LeftLion magazine around the time, so look out for it. Thank you for listening right till the end. If it's still 2024 or early 2025 where you are, we hope you have a really happy new year. Otherwise, just have an awesome and amazing life. Bye bye.